Let's look first at our net job loss measure for our weekly economic update here at Gallup. 27% is the number. That's 27% of employed Americans who tell us that at their place of work, people are being let go. Now, there have been some ups and downs on this measure in recent weeks, but basically, if you look at the big picture, I don't see a lot of change all year on this measure. We did have the government come out and tell us that maybe based on their figures last week, there was a slight drop in job losses. But again, in the big picture, we're simply not seeing any kind of major change, particularly not the kind of change we saw last year when we went from positive to negative. What about job creation? What percent of American workers say people are being hired where they work? That's at 22%. That's actually fairly low on a relative basis, but again, looking at the big picture, it's about where it's been, give or take a few points, for a number of the last several months. What about spending? We would love to see consumer spending go up because that would be a real sign that the economy was picking up. It is up this week compared to last week. $63 was the average amount of money that people said they spent daily last week. I should remind you that last year at this time, this would have been early June of 2008, the average amount of money people said they spent was $120. So we're really continuing to see significantly lower spending now than we did at the same time last year. Finally, the consumer's attitudes, consumer mood, consumer confidence. What are we finding here? Well, what about economic pessimists? The people who say the economy is getting worse, 58%. I don't see much change in that since mid-April. Sure, again, weekly, up a little, down a little, but basically since mid-April, not a lot of change on that measure. Same thing for consumer positivity, now at 36%. Rate the current economy. One number we look at is the percent who say it is poor. That's at 47%, and again, not changed a lot. I should point out that the consumer pessimism measure was much, much worse last fall, at some points over 80%. So clearly, we're better off now than we were. I keep reminding you of that. But in terms of recent changes over the last several weeks, I would say steady as she goes. Not very good steady because, of course, everything's still in a negative modality, but we're just not seeing major sustained change on any of our weekly economic numbers. I'm Dr. Frank Newport, Editor-in-Chief of the Gallup Poll.